Hello, good morning. You're watching Breakfast this morning with Louise and Dan.
A technical glitch which led to nearly 16,000 COVID-19 cases go unreported in England should never have happened. That's according to the Health Secretary.
So, has the problem been fixed? Let's pick up on this and a number of other issues this morning by speaking live to the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak, who joins us on Breakfast. Good morning to you. Thank you very much for spending a bit of time with us today. Can we start with the test and trace system? Conservative estimates say that some 34,000 people could be completely unaware they've been exposed to the coronavirus because of what we saw over the weekend. It seems that every day we speak to a minister on this programme and we're asking questions about why the test and trace system isn't up to scratch. What's happened?
Well, I'd echo what the Health Secretary said yesterday. This should never have happened. And the primacy now is making sure we're working as hard as we can to fix it. So in that vein, what has happened over the weekend, several thousand man-hours were deployed in finding and contacting all those who we hadn't contacted over the previous couple of days would have been made. And I'd say probably a couple of other things that are worth bearing in mind. The Chief Medical Officer won't change their analysis of the progress of the virus and the measures that were taken last week, so that's important. And at schools, hospitals and care homes would not have been affected by this because those are dealt with in a slightly different way given the importance of those settings. So I think that...
Forgive me for interrupting you. You know how much scrutiny you are under with this system. You know that there are so many important issues around reliability. You were warned, we hear, about this system not being up to scratch. How can this happen?
Well, as I said, it should not have happened, and an investigation has been launched, as the Health Secretary said yesterday. It's worth taking a step back and seeing we have made a lot of progress in developing 10,000 tests a day. That, as of, I think, yesterday or the day before, we did 250,000, with is ramping up to 500,000 by the end of October. We're already currently, if not the leading, one of the leading nations for testing, a real difference. But you're right, we can always do better and we will keep at it.
You have said that, haven't you? You said opening up the economy, which you talk about a lot, relies on test and trace. I think the quote was doing its job. Do you think it can do its job?
I think it already is doing its job, Dan. As I said, we're now testing 250,000 people a day. So have testing which allows us to do population survey testing every week to give it in our interventions and localised in our approach. Those are all tools that we didn't have at the beginning of this crisis that we do now, and that's why I think the investment is paying dividends, but we will keep working at it to make this system better and better every week and every month. That's to all our benefit. It allows us to suppress the spread of the virus. And
of course, tied in with this is this a policy of local lockdowns. We've just spoken to the Mayor of Greater Manchester. If you look at the figures for Manchester, July the 31st, when local... Are they working?
Well, I think that they are working, and it's going to be different in every particular area, the source of transmission, which we pull in the Midlands, where I think the scientists were able to identify that they thought it was household transmission more. We can adapt our interventions, and if you look at places like Leicester or Luton, indeed, who have had these restrictions and have them lifted, clearly wouldn't be appropriate, and we should try and avoid that if we can, given that there are areas of the country which aren't seeing this level of transmission, and therefore in those areas we can afford to take a slightly different approach. I think that is a better way to go, this more targeted, localised approach.
OK, I'd like to talk to you this morning about paying for the pandemic. You're the man with his hands on the purse strings. What does that mean? Does that mean measures not in this term of Parliament? What are we looking at?
Yeah. So, what does that mean is this year, I'd say to viewers, this year we're obviously having to borrow an enormous amount of money to provide support to the economy at a time of crisis. That's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to try and protect as many jobs as possible at this difficult time, because ultimately that will help us recover quicker. Obviously, this can't carry on forever. This level of borrowing, which will be record levels pretty much this year, it is not sustainable in the long run. We need to get through this, have our economy start to recover, and as we then take stock of the situation, we want to restore our public finances through. Right now, that's not the focus. Right now, the focus is on protecting as many jobs as possible. That's why the Prime Minister today is going to be talking about we're focused on.
And on those jobs, and when we said that you would be on this morning, we've had so many people contact this programme saying that they feel excluded from the measures, who are worried about their mental health because of what's happened in the last few months. What do you say to them this morning?
Well, I think there's many people, Dan, who may not just fear that that's going to happen. There's many people for whom that's already happened. 750,000 people have already lost their jobs as a result of what has happened. 2.5 and 3 million people who are self-employed have received support through our self-employed income scheme, which is one of the most comprehensive and generous in the world. You talked about small businesses. Not only have they benefited from the furlough scheme, 1 million small businesses have benefited from our bounce back loan program with cancelled business rates, and indeed they would have received 10 or 25,000 pounds in cash grants. Almost 1 million businesses received those.
Chancellor, you mentioned all that money, and that's an awful lot of
support.
money. And the question I wanted to ask you about how do we pay for that? Because you said you'd look at it, and jobs are your priority, but sometime that will have to fall, and that's surely going to come down to tax rises, isn't it?
Well, I can't comment on future tax policy, Dan, so you'll forgive me for that. But I think what people should take away is right now the priority is focused on protecting as many jobs as possible. It needs to take on new apprentices at any stage in someone's career. All of that will help provide that fresh opportunity. But yes, once we get through this, I think to enter that period knowing that your public finances are in a strong position. And it's because of some of the difficult decisions and hard work that's been done over the past 10 years that I was able to act with the... That's why this is important.
It sounds like you are talking about tax rises without saying you're talking about tax rises.
I say the same thing whenever I'm asked, Dan, so I wouldn't read anything more into it than I can't comment on future tax policy outside of fiscal events. That's the same answer I give to everyone on any question about tax. So okay. I don't think you can read anything into that either way.
Can I ask you about the Eat Out to Help Out scheme, which I think has cost the government to date about 522. Is it a mistake?
No, I don't think it was, actually. We've just been spending all this time talking about jobs, and you highlighted the calls from your, or the emails and messages from your viewers talking about being fearful of losing their jobs. But
it's that balance, isn't it, Chancellor, between protecting jobs and also protecting people's health?
The hospitality industry employs over 2 million people. I think it's important for behaviour for us to relearn what that feels like in order to try and protect those jobs. In terms of the scheme itself, as well, our scientists, you'll remember, talked about us following exactly the same curve as France and Spain and a little bit different to Belgium. For example, the southwest, that part of the country is today seeing some of the lowest levels of coronavirus spread. To be as normal as possible. We want the economy to be as normal as possible because that protects as many jobs as possible, but we have to do that whilst balancing the need to suppress the virus and ensure that children go to school and all these other things. It is a very difficult balance to get right.
Can I ask you about the curfew, Chancellor? Do you agree with the 10 o'clock curfew? Do you think that's working?
Yes, I think the curfew is something that we were told by our advisors could well make a difference to the venues, and particularly exacerbated later in the evening. And in common with many other countries around the world, this is thought to be something that can help suppress the spread of the virus. We're not an outlier in having a curfew. Lots and lots of countries have done very similar things. And what I'd say is it's better than having places closed.
We understand that in Cabinet there's healthy discussions about these things, about measures that you're putting in place, about things. The sort of one topic that has caused the most discomfort in Cabinet around that table, discussions about whether that's the right thing to do or not.
No, I mean, I wouldn't obviously dream of commenting on private discussions, but I think you're right more generally, and I think people would be shocked otherwise if they thought we were a bunch of robots sitting around a table. It will make a difference, and as I said, it's something that many other countries around the world are also doing. So I think that should give people some reassurance that we are not a massive outlier in this regard.
You currently sit in one seat around that Cabinet table. Do you ever think about sitting in the top seat at some stage, moving to number 10?
No, the job I have is difficult enough. We're very fortunate to have the Prime Minister leading us. I see that every day up close. It's an extremely difficult job at a time of crisis.
Mr. Sunak, you said yesterday that you had watched him do the job over the last few months and you'd seen the stresses. As
I said, my job is difficult enough. We've just been talking a lot, rightly, about your viewers and others who are worried about their jobs. Now that's something that weighs very heavily on me. That's happening on my watch. That's my responsibility. The British economy, people's jobs and livelihoods, and unfortunately at the moment many people are losing their job, and let the Prime Minister get on with what he's best at, which is leading this country through what is a very difficult time.
Chancellor, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
You are watching BBC Breakfast. It's exactly 7:45, and Carol can tell us what's happening with the weather today.
From 6.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.